So good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another interview of the Shield Dude on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and tonight I'm joined by Jason Blake, and he's a guitar player. He also plays in a prog rock trio, but he put out, I believe it's his second solo album. It's called Radiant Dusk. It came out a few days ago, and we're here to talk all about it. So, Jason, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Nice. So I listened to the album. So it's pretty interesting because it's kind of more like a laid back type of record, but it's got some interesting things that you do on the Warr guitar. That for I didn't know that much about that type of guitar, and when I saw the strings. So can you tell me a little bit about that type of guitar and how you got into playing that type of guitar?
Sure. So a Warr guitar is a 12-string instrument. I guess technically there's an 8-string and a 10-string version as well, but the one that I play is a 12-string guitar. It has basically a guitar side and a bass side. So the guitar side is tuned in fourths similar to a guitar. I just happen to have a low C sharp instead of a low B or an E, depending on what kind of a guitar you'd have.
Here it is, so people can see it.
Yeah, there you go. There, and so then the other side of it is the bass side, but the difference is it's tuned backwards. So you can see the low string in the middle of the guitar. If you can see that picture, that's a low C, so it's being tuned backwards in fifths. So you have one side going in fourths, one side going backwards in fifths, and you think of it like sometimes I switch, but mainly my left hand would play the bass lines and my right hand would play the guitar lines. So obviously you could switch that and you can have your left hand playing on the guitar side and the right hand playing on the bass side as well. But typically speaking, that's what it is I'm doing. And worth noting is that you do all of this by tapping. So similar to a piano, you're tapping the strings like you would be tapping the keys of a piano. So there's not really much plucking or strumming or picking going on with this. I mean, technically you could drop it down and do some of that stuff, but for the most part, I play it all with the tapping technique.
Yeah, so that's what I read about the tapping technique. So I found it very interesting, and it looks heavy.
Yeah, it is heavy. In fact, the latest one that I have, we hollowed out the inside of it a little bit so as to alleviate some of that weight. So it can get pretty heavy though. One of the things you had asked how I got into it. So yeah, I started on piano, but moved from piano to guitar and then to bass. And so I was playing a lot of bass lines, but doing a lot of tapping on the bass. So what I was doing is finding myself like trying to take the 4-string bass into a solo instrument kind of level. And when I was doing that, I started doing a lot of that tapping technique. And somebody turned me on to a Chapman stick. A Chapman stick is similar to the Warr guitar in that it's got a similar tuning. The design of it is very different. But I went and bought one of those, and that's what kind of got me into it. So from Chapman stick, I moved to the Warr guitar, and then I've been playing that ever since.
No, yeah, and so your latest album, Radiant Dusk, I found it. It's an album. I found it. It's relaxing. It's like the way it's not like a super because with your other brand it's more prog. I felt it was more like stripped down, and obviously the Warr guitar, the guitar is a center stage on every song. So let's talk a little bit about Radiant Dusk so yeah, on this album, yeah, I felt like that type of vibe, that it's a more chill, relaxing record. What were you trying to achieve with the sound of this record?
Exactly that. I was trying to, I play with a band, Aziola Cry. So that's my progressive metal sort of band. And I do all the writing for all the projects I'm involved in, but that one, because it's very heavy, it's very mathematical. I wanted to do something a little different. So under my own name, I did an album with Marco Miniman entitled Subsequent Ruins. And that one featured the Warr guitar a little more extensively, but still wasn't very much in the prog rock vein. So with this one, what I wanted to do was something very different, and that was strip it down to essentially just the instrument as a solo instrument. And I played it on the one that you showed the picture of. That's a semi-hollow. It has an acoustic tonality to it. So that was intentional as well. I wanted it to have a little bit more of an acoustic versus electric feel to it. And the big thing that I did songwriting wise was that I wanted it to move a little bit away from that progressive rock structure. So I stripped away the long song idea. I simplified the songs. I even allowed myself to write in 4/4, which is something that I don't typically do with my progressive rock stuff. So that was really the basis of it, was wanting to do something like that. Another thing that was happening simultaneously is that I was getting a lot of gigs doing solo shows, smaller venues. And for that, I found that some of the Subsequent Ruins material and even some of the Aziola Cry material works in a solo setting, but it always feels like it's lacking that heaviness or lacking, you know, the other instruments that are accompanying that music. So I wanted to create music that was truly just for that venue, you know, a smaller venue, acoustic, coffee shops, even whatever it might be, that I was getting a lot of these solo shows. So this is that album that was intentional to be exactly that.
Yeah, it does have like that chill coffee vibe type of feel to it. So do you find, because obviously coming from prog, because prog can be like so many changes and so complex, was it hard for you to simplify?
Initially it really was, and that sounds so bizarre to say, like, you know, writing more simplistic music is more complicated, but it really was, because I'm so used to writing stuff like that. So what was happening though is this was kind of simultaneously while I was writing the album Subsequent Ruins, some of this material came about, and what happened was I just didn't feel like it either fit the vibe of that album, the story of that album, or like I said, some of it was 4/4, and I just thought, like, okay, what am I going to do with this? This has a very different approach to the sound. So I kind of stuck it off to the side. And then when I came back at it after I finished Subsequent Ruins album, I came back and thought, all right, I want to take some of those ideas, because I liked them. I just didn't think it fit that progressive rock sound. So I started approaching them. And then what happened is I started just creating more of the same, just different, if that makes any sense. And really what I wanted to do then was like, wait, I want to try an entirely different approach. So I simplified the song structure. I allowed myself to go kind of A, B, bridge, you know, out kind of thing. And that's something that I just don't do with my progressive rock stuff. So in making it simple, it actually became hard at first to allow myself really to do that. But then once I got going, it became really fun. So then it just became like, all right, where can I take this new approach? And it became easier as it went. But yeah, initially it was kind of like it just didn't feel like something that I was accustomed to doing, really.
Yeah, but it makes sense if you're doing a solo record, like that's what solo records are for. Like for experimentation, do something different from your like main band. Like I really don't understand when people, like, there's people that do like solo projects and they're like, oh, but they don't sound like their band. That's the idea. They do a solo project so they can do some different stuff. So I'm gonna show the artwork for Radiant Dusk. I know it's already out. I think it was out last Friday, right?
Yep, it just came out last Friday.
The 20th. So yeah, let's talk about the cover. You know, it's a pretty simple. It's a very like I gotta look to see what I'm looking at, because it's kind of looks like there's like a house upside down or something like that. So
Yeah.
tell me about the cover. What were you trying to portray with this cover?
So with really every album I do, it's very conceptual. There's always like a lot of thought put into a storyline. And that's exactly what Subsequent Ruins was. If you were to look at that album, the artwork on the cover, not only on the cover but inside, it was a full 12-page booklet of art that told the story along with it. And that's typically what I do, is I put a lot of time and energy into a story and then tell it through the music and with the images. Well, this is actually the opposite of that, because again, I wanted to do something very, very different. So none of these songs tie together thematically. None of these songs tie together sonically. There's a Spanish sounding song to some melancholic songs to some very upbeat things, which are very different for what I do. So in the same vein, this artwork was very much like not meant to make a soundtrack type statement or go along with the theme, as much as just represent the mood of what it was that I was trying to do. So I typically have an idea, at least, and I felt a very mosaic vibe to this album, because it was a lot of very different things, a lot of different sounds for me. So when this was created, what I really liked about it is you could see like the windows kind of form that mosaic feel to it. So it just spoke to me in a way where I just like, that's what it meant musically to me, was this image. So we went with this one because of that. So
yeah, it looks good. And so Radiant Dusk, obviously being a instrumental piece, like what musically with your instruments, like what is the story or the vibe of Radiant Dusk?
So like I said, there is no story to this album.
Yeah.
Every song is very just, it has its own little story. The title track, Radiant Dusk, is just like, because a lot of what I work in is darkness, dark tones. Music is dark. Aziola Cry as a band works, and the artwork is very monotone. I look for very minor key, almost evil sounding riffs for that music. So with this, it was really intentional to be, again, very different, very opposite. So it had a brightness to it, a very different feel. And so I wanted the title and I wanted the artwork and even to have that very different feel to it. So Radiant Dusk, for me, the radiance of it, just like I wanted there to allow myself to have some, and I don't want to say just happiness. It wasn't about that, but like some major key usage, some just a very different tonality to it than what I'm typically write and what I'm associated with. So to me, that is exactly what it represents, is just kind of the duality of what it is I do, the Radiant Dusk, the very bright, but still retaining that darkness kind of idea.
So in this album, do you have like a track that for you was, which one like was the hardest song for you to write for this one?
The hardest one to write. I don't know. So there's a few that sound close to what it is I typically do. And I would say that would be an Aversion of Fervor or a Perverse Rumination. Those to me kind of have a similar vibe to what it is I typically do. Then there's some melancholic songs, and those I would say again resemble stuff I've done. There's I would say the hardest one was probably, it's called Seemingly Quixotic. It was written for my wife. was never really into Spanish music, but she's from Spain, so I travel to Spain a lot now. And as part of that, I've kind of engulfed myself in that culture. And that music has become something that I now enjoy and listen to a lot more. So I wanted to do something that had that feel, that sound. Not necessarily trying to say that I'm now a flamenco guitarist. I didn't want to, I'm not
Yeah,
far. But what I wanted to do is have, that sound uh, present. So I wrote that song entitled Seemingly Quixotic, and I think that that's probably, just because it's so foreign from where I'm coming from, but it has a very Spanish feel to it. So I
yeah,
would say that.
the flamenco element. And there's you have another album that's going to come out soon, right? That is going to be like the slightly different paths, but
Yeah. So what happened when I started doing this is I enjoyed the process so much that one thing led to another thing led to another. So I wrote the music for Radiant Dusk, and then some of the songs they seemed like they would sound great with drums. So we added some drums to 5 of the tracks from Radiant Dusk. And then I wrote a new song specifically for this EP, which is entitled Slightly Different Paths. It's the title track from this. And so it had an album, the main album, and a counterpart album, which featured the drums. And then one thing led to another, and that turned into a second EP, which I'm going to release at some point later on in the year, which is, I love doing the Spanish songs so much that I actually wrote 3 more Spanish songs. And there's a separate EP that'll be coming out a little later on, entitled Seemingly Quixotic, named after that track that's also on Radiant Dust. So it kind of like spawned a couple offshoot albums, and so that's one of them. And that one was just announced last week. The press release came out, and it'll come out November 17th. And what I should say is, so both of those albums, Radiant Dusk and Slightly Different Paths, as digital albums, they're separate with 2 separate releases. But on the release of Slightly Different Paths on November 17th, that will also be a 2-disc set where they come together in a
yeah,
CD
I
set.
listened to Radiant Dust for now. So yeah, I didn't listen to the other one, but I saw that another. So where in Spain did you go to?
So my wife's from Almeria, so that's down on the Mediterranean coast. So kind of like you got to the west, you got Malaga, and to the east, you have Valencia. So it sits right in the middle there.
No.
I know I'm not doing a very good Spanish accent, but in English it would be Almeria.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, my grandmother was from the island of Mallorca in Spain, so
Okay, yeah.
yeah, so it's cool, and obviously Spanish culture, the food, the music, it's great, especially for like acoustic type of guitars. I think they have
Yeah.
one of the better. I don't play guitar, but I think the sound of the acoustic guitar from Spain is like it's very noticeable.
Well, it was invented. So
Yeah.
the acoustic guitar, there in Almeria, there's an acoustic guitar museum that I went to, because that's the birthplace of the 6-string flamenco guitar, whatever you want to call it, the Spanish guitar, is from the town where my wife is from. So they have a museum dedicated to it that I've gone to a couple times. It's fantastic.
No, yeah, that's
It's definitely engrossed in the culture. It's everywhere, and that's what I think also got me into the music a little bit more. Is it's one thing, I wouldn't have gone out necessarily buying CDs randomly and trying to find anybody. But although, having said that, I did own for years some Paco de Lucia CDs because of the famous trio with John McLaughlin and El Di Meola. So I was familiar with somebody like that, but I didn't go delving too deep into that type of music. But when I go there and you hear somebody standing on the street corner and they're playing some really cool song, all of a sudden it started making me get a little bit more excited about it, and asking what song is that he's playing, and then realizing that, oh, I did, that is a song that you can find and easily realize that I had heard it before or whatever. So I've become a lot more into that music as a result of being there and being immersed in that culture.
Yeah, no, my grandfather used to love that type of guitar, and he played it all the time. And so yeah, it's a music that I growing up, I've listened to it, and I kept some of the records that he has of like that, like classic, like more Spanish style guitar. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. So you got the album that's already out, but you're putting out this companion album, and they'll be together. So yeah, at some point, will you do like I imagine this would be like playing this type of songs. It will have to be like in an intimate small venue. Do you have any plans to play these songs live?
Yeah, so just this past Friday, I had what I would call kind of the release of the album. It's a real popular coffee shop. Well, it's actually become more of a brewery, but place here in Chicago. So I played that show this past weekend. I've got about 5 or 6 shows booked kind of towards the end of the year because of the holidays. I take off a little bit of time there. But then I'm going to pick up back at the beginning of next year again, and a lot of shows are getting booked for that already. One of the things I found last summer was that I started venturing out a little further than Chicagoland and the Illinois and Wisconsin, and I started going into Michigan and Ohio, and I really enjoyed that. So I'm going to continue to do that. For next summer, I have bigger plans of even getting down as far as Texas and kind of taking this a little bit further. So I really enjoy playing this material live. It's really fun. It's real easy to set up. It's just my acoustic Warr and my little pedal set kind of thing. So it's just the kind of it's my portable kind of. One of the things that happens is with especially Aziola Cry, it's because such a production. My drummer plays a massive drum kit, the guitar with all the amps and everything. It's a lot of gear. It's a lot of hauling stuff around. So this is kind of the opposite of that for me. I like how I could just put a guitar in the trunk and go anywhere and play this music, and that's really what the goal of it was. So yeah, I plan on doing a lot of shows, especially next year. I have about 6 or 7 this year that I've been doing towards the end of the year, but it picks up pretty heavy starting next year.
Do you play the set sitting down or
it's actually when I practice at home, I sit down because I practice for so long that it's kind of a pain to stand. But live, I always play it standing up, which I think it's a little bit more. It's not that really. I think at the end of the day, the whole reason is that it's an appearance thing. Standing up, you can move around, you can bounce around, you do whatever. I think it's technically a little more comfortable playing sitting down, to be honest with you, but I just still think there's something to be standing, like people are more interested in watching me standing up and moving around or whatever. So I typically play it that way.
And I bet the crowd is it different from the prog rock band that you get for this?
Yeah, well, what's interesting though is when I promote these shows, I do kind of acknowledge the fact that where I'm coming from, and a lot of people will come from the prog rock part of things. So I will find some people in the audience that will come there looking for me to do the prog rock thing. And I do actually a few of my songs, just acoustic versions. So it's not like I don't include some of that. But it's definitely a little different. But what I've also found is it's opening up to an entirely new audience by doing this as well, because where the prog rock thing is very, there's a lot of fans for it. This stuff is a little more, I call this my accessible music, because I feel like it's a little more accessible to everybody. You don't have to be just a prog rock fan to enjoy this, because like you even mentioned, it could be relaxing even. It could be background music for somebody at a coffee shop.
I could show this to my parents and they would be like, finally, some music that we can listen to.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for with it a little bit. It's just something that, yeah, I think that there would be a little bit more mass appeal to it. It would, and that's why I also varied the songs up a little bit too. So, you know, a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of rock, a little bit of quiet ballady kind of sound, a little bit of venturing into close to jazz, not quite jazz, that, but you know, having a little bit more of a jazz structure to some of it. Because I wanted exactly that. I wanted there to be a little something for everyone, kind of a thing.
Yeah, but it sounds like a coffee shop, so people don't be it doesn't sound like elevator music or the worst kind of music, dentist music. It does not
Yeah.
sound like that. So yeah, it's I found it, you know, pretty entertaining, pretty yeah, it has like a simplicity to it, but also like pretty cool. So so I get it where you say it's like more accessible. So I found it interesting, like you come from the prog rock world, but you're doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty interesting album. So Radiant Dusk is out now. But I'll put the link for people who maybe want to buy it with the upcoming album that's coming out on the 17th of
Yep.
November. And I'll put the link for your, you know, your social, so people, if they know when to catch you at a show. So
Cool.
Jason, you know, I want to thank you for taking some time of your night to talk with me about Radiant Dusk and obviously the Warr guitar, because I didn't know when I saw the name, oh yeah, that's different. So I didn't know that much about the guitar. So it's been interesting to know more about that instrument.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun to play. I mean, it's not the easiest instrument to learn, but it's a lot of fun because I think the thing that I enjoy the most is the fact that you're a bass player and a guitar player at the same time. So there's a lot of it's limitless to the possibilities of what you could really do with it. So
No,
it's
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I bet it looks very hard, but yes. So, people, the album for Jason Blake, Radiant Dusk, is out now. Get it or stream it if you want to listen to it. And obviously, like you can put it with your parents or everyone. It's an album that the whole family can enjoy. So, anything
Yeah.
you like to say to the people watching this video?
Um, just maybe just like go to my website. I think that because I'm always doing something, so there's always something new
What's your
coming.
website?
Yeah, jasonblakemusic.com. And I really like updating my website. I make a point of making sure that it's current and putting stuff on there that you can't find even on the socials, because I just like that to be my home base, and the socials be more of my disseminating of news place versus, you know, a one-stop shop for everything. So it's got all the albums, it's got a lot more in-depth stuff there, it's got all my interviews and things like that there as well. So I think it's a good place to go because
Nice.
you'll see what I've got coming up next.
So my interview will be there as well.
It will be there. Yes.
Yeah. So Jason, again, you know, great chatting with you. And I hope the acoustic shows and everything goes well. So people, the album is out now. So until next time, people, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.